Good morning, everyone. We'll get started with today's session. I know we are waiting for a few more people to join, but I think some of the weather we're having at the moment, may have caused people to be unable to attend, as well as obviously the short week. But nonetheless, I'm expecting this to be an extremely valuable session. So today's session takes place as part of the shared learning program. And is one of our manufacturing meetup activities. Today's webinar is going to focus on the lessons and benefits, specifically from Webory and Homewood in relation to their implementation of renewable energy solutions. So a very practical session to highlight the journey that each of them have been on and the benefits and results that they have derived from that particular journey thus far. And obviously they will share their story with you in a few minutes. We also have ABSA, who will be participating in today's session, that will just briefly outline some of the financial options available to firms. It's often one of the key questions that firms ask when considering implementing renewable energy. How are they going to finance it? What are the finance options available? And ABSA will just touch on some of the options available for firms to consider in this regard. So just jumping straight into it, obviously, today's focus is on renewable energy. I think most of you are familiar with the concept or the topic of renewable energy. But just to clarify, renewable energy is ultimately energy that is derived from natural resources that are replenished at a higher rate than they are consumed. That is the philosophy and the view of renewable energy. There are various types of renewable energy. Obviously, probably one of the most common known sources of renewable energy is solar energy, which is ultimately derived from the sun. We also get wind energy, which is obviously when we harness energy from moving air through turbines, and this can be onshore or offshore in the form of sea or freshwater turbines. There's also geothermal energy, which utilizes the Earth's interior, where heat is extracted from the geothermal reservoirs using wells or other means. Hydropower, I think most of us have heard of as well, derived from water moving from higher to lower elevations, generated from reservoirs and rivers. And there are examples in South Africa where dams generate hydropower. So that obviously is a form of energy, of renewable energy. Ocean energy is when we use technology to generate kinetic or thermal energy from seawater, waves or currents to produce electricity or heat. And then bioenergy, which is produced from a variety of organic materials, often called or referred to as biomass. And this could be wood, charcoal, and other type of organic chemicals, almost burning fuels. And obviously, there are examples of that as well. And obviously, that would be another example. So these are the typical types of renewable energies that, are available. Obviously, today's focus is on South Africa Pacific, and renewable energy has become a very hot topic in South Africa. And this is largely linked to the reliance on fossil fuels. On the one hand, replenishing fossil fuels and the need to reduce carbon emissions. And ultimately, there is a sort of this like dual focus on finding alternative energy sources, and obviously renewable energies is that alternative source. In terms of some of the advantages that are viewed as being the adoption of renewable energy in South Africa, it reduces the reliance on fossil fuels, as I've alluded to. It creates jobs, specifically in the green energy or renewable energy space, improves energy security. You're able to manage your own energy to a large extent, reduces the cost of electricity, carbon emissions, improves air quality. It can support rural communities. Obviously, energy can be generated for them. It will support economic growth, protect your water reserves, and ultimately protect the environment. So these are at a high level some of the advantages of renewable energy. And then just in terms of the reasons, what are some of the justificational reasons that firms look to adopt renewable energies? I've listed some there, and this is based on sort of like international research So obviously at a global level, incentives would be drivers towards the adoption of renewable energy, environmental responsibility, energy dependence and security, which we've alluded to already, technological advancement, and competitive advantages. So these are viewed as being some of let's call it the global drivers to the adoption of renewable energy. And in South Africa, we've got our own challenges. And, based on my engagements with industry, I believe there are sort of three core reasons that firms do look to adopt renewable energy. Linked to, and I'm not putting in any particular order, but firstly, the energy challenges. Load shedding isn't as prevalent as it was, well, a while ago. But the concern is that it will come back, and we obviously have infrastructure challenges that remain. So there are real energy challenges that are being experienced, still. Cost challenges, and I think there's two elements to this. The one is obviously the increase in electricity on the one side, and also just trying to remain more cost competitive at the end of the day. So obviously definite cost challenges, and then the green challenges. A lot of industries are under pressure to become greener, and there are requirements in place to reduce their carbon emissions and ultimately operate a more sustainable businesses. So this is sort of the key drivers towards the adoption of renewable energy globally, as well as in South Africa specifically. All right, I think I've said more than enough. I'm now going to hand over to our participants today, and they are going to share their insights in terms of their journey, specifically at Webory and at Homewood, and then Absa will give insights. So we're going to start with Gary Royston from Webory. He's the director at Webory, and then he'll share their particular journey, and he'll be followed then by Ian Perry, the managing director at Homewood, and then Spar Ntobela, who oversees the renewable energy division within Absa. Will close off the session in terms of the some of the financing options. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing. Sorry, and Ian, you're going to start. I apologize. Is that right? We said Ian, you're going to go first.
Yeah, I don't mind.
Yeah, sorry, Ian.
I can
Apologies.
go first if you want me
Yeah.
to.
So, yeah. Can you share your slide, your screen? Perfect.
Yeah, let me know when it comes through.
I will. Still busy loading. There we are. All right, I can see it. So Ian, you can take it away.
All right, morning everyone. Yeah, it's actually a very cold and wet morning here in the Midlands of KZN. Yeah, but we'll jump straight into it. I still find it quite weird talking to a blank screen and knowing that there's people somewhere behind it and trying to get some sort of response. So, yeah, if it seems a bit strange, forgive me. And Sean, if there's any questions or whatever while I'm busy presenting, just let me know, please.
Will do.
Okay, so just a quick background on who we are, just to give a bit of perspective of why we went down the route we did. Yeah, I'm the MD of Homewood Manufacturing, and we are bespoke and custom-made furniture manufacturers, and everything is made to order, based in KZN Midlands, and currently we're running 2 shifts of 9 hours each with just over 100 employees split between those 2 shifts. We are, I'm not saying a proud Eskom user, but we have a transformer of 100 kVA, Eskom direct supply. We use our main sort of electrical consumption is from 3-phase electric motors. We don't have any heating in the factory, so everything really is just sort of motor driven in terms of consumption. About 3,000 square meters under roof and based in KZN Midlands. And if you want to know if solar works in the Midlands, the last 2 days, absolutely not. It's been horrific. So the question in terms of our journey and why did we go solar? It was quite an interesting sort of bit of research we did, and how we got sort of pushed into this direction. The sort of main thing was on the back of load shedding. To run 2 shifts and have sort of 4 to 6 hours off every day and try and manage your staff and manage productivity and production around that type of Stop start was just, really wasn't good. Cash flow took a knock. Our employees' morale took quite a big dip, and it was a downward spiral into the abyss. So we had to try and come up with a plan on what to do to try and alleviate specifically stage 4 onwards in terms of load shedding. Um, one of our first option was to go diesel, put a generator in, burn tons of diesel, put carbon into the atmosphere. Um, from a cost perspective, the initial capital outlay was a lot cheaper to go that route, but over time it would have caught up with us and nipped us in the butt. To try and burn 100,000 rands worth of diesel a month just to keep the lights on, wouldn't have been sustainable at all. One of the other options we looked at was also converting our sawdust and our offcuts into gas, and then putting that gas into a gas generator via a process called pyrolysis. This was actually quite an interesting one. We did sort of quite a bit of due diligence behind it, but sort of came to the conclusion that the technology wasn't quite there in South Africa, so we wouldn't have had enough support to implement it successfully. And we also sort of realized by the time we implemented this, the cost of that versus the cost of solar would have been very, very similar. So hence we went the sort of solar route, and hoping that we'd had more sunny days than cloudy days. So one of the other reasons we looked at the solar route was obviously environmental considerations. We are, as a brand, very conscious about sustainability, so it was definitely one of the more obvious routes to go. And also looking at the cost of power and what that was doing in terms of predictions going into the future. If we could sort of try and hedge that and produce and become a lot more self-sufficient in terms of power generation, it was actually a no-brainer. There were also some good tax incentives that came through from SARS and from Eskom, which really have come in handy the last year or two since we've implemented it. And then there's also the SSEG, the small-scale embedded generation scheme that's been put in with Eskom. And we have applied for it, and this really just will help us sort of pay back the amount owed for the implementation of the system. So but dealing with Eskom a year down the line, and we're still waiting to get approval via that SSEG application, but I think we're getting pretty close. All right, so the journey, once we had decided we're going to go solar, the first thing we did was collect data via an independent contractor. So they came and put a meter inside our main DB box, and the idea was to measure our load for at least 3 months to see, how much solar we would need to generate to at least run a day shift within our operations. With that data, we then went to various solar suppliers, got various quotes. And then once we got the quotes, and we had to look at the financing decision, whether we're going to lease to own, finance via a loan, or pay it cash outright. So we selected a really good supplier called TRRC. They came in as probably not specifically the cheapest, but in terms of the product that they were offering and the service that they were going to offer, we selected them as being sort of the best candidate. And then we actually went the route of financing via a loan, and we financed it via the DTIC and the Furniture Competitiveness Fund, which is administered by the IDC. Reason we went that route, exceptionally low interest rates once we put all the various blend of products together that was up for offer. But just a word of warning, if you do plan on going this route, especially having to get finance through the IDC, an exceptionally long process and very, very arduous. It took us probably about 18 months to get finance approval and to get get the funds into to finance the solar. So if we had to go that route again, it would be a tough call whether to use that packet, that solution. Okay, so performance thus far. So our solar system has been in use for the last year. Yeah, we actually commissioned it in May last year. And this is what we have generated thus far. Now, keeping in mind, we have a day and a night shift. So if you see our PV generation coming in at 92,000 kilowatt hours for the year, and our total load was 162,000 kilowatt hours. So our PV generation took up probably 56% of our load. So 56% of our electricity was generated by the sun, which is exactly enough to keep our day shift going without having to use Eskom. Whereas our night shift obviously was fully supported by importing from Eskom. So I would say in terms of our objectives, it has definitely achieved what we wanted, and definitely sort of paying back the capital expenditure that we put in. Quite interestingly, some other stats, our highest production via the sun was in July and October. Yeah, so obviously the less rainfall you get, the more sunshine you get, the more PV generation you'll get. And interestingly, in those months, if we were attached to Eskom via that SSEG scheme where we could pump back into the grid, we probably would have generated a lot more in terms of PV. Because with this system, if you aren't linked to the grid, once your batteries are at 100%, the PV will match the load. And in some cases, I mean, our load will sort of average about 70 to 80 kilowatt hours an hour. And at midday, we can probably generate about 100 to 120 kilowatts per hour. So once the batteries have been fed on at 100%, it matches the load, meaning that you're actually losing quite a bit of potential from that PV generation. So once we get SSEG up and running, we can then push back into the grid and take more advantage of the system that we have in place. Okay, so energy conservation, if we want to look at sustainability, this is what we've saved in terms of CO2 reduction, 122 tons of coal, or of CO2, 40 tons of coal, 3,223 kgs of sulfur dioxide, and 68 trees. And the trees is quite a nice thing, seeing as though we do consume trees through the factory in furniture. It's always nice to be able to put back and try and even that out a bit. Okay, so the lessons and the benefits. Right, so far you need to find a way to expedite that SSEG application. So if you are going into solar and you want to maximize your system, you've got to find a way to reduce the lead time of application to actually implementing it with Eskom. It really is a vital aspect in terms of payback with your system. Big thing is don't wait to act. You need to make a decision relatively quick and get it implemented, because the quicker you can get it implemented, the quicker you can start saving on your Eskom bill. Very, very important to find the right finance solution. And that really comes through in terms of speccing the system, and just determining what your goals are. So for us, it was trying to buffer the load shedding schedules, and also to try and start saving on Eskom costs. And I think in terms of our goals, we are pretty much almost there. Make sure you monitor once you've put it in place, monitor and set up to maximize your battery use, and sort of sunlight, peak load, and peak Eskom charge periods. There's quite a bit of programming that you can do with these inverters that make it very clever, and you can absolutely maximize your cost efficiency and your battery use. And since we've put the system in place, we've almost had 0 hours lost due to load shedding. but it's a running joke inside the factory as well. Since we put it up, we've almost had no load shedding as well. So you can thank us for getting rid of load shedding nationally. Right. So going forward, yeah, our SSEG approval is almost there. And once we get that sorted, we can then use Eskom pretty much as a battery over weekends and on sunny days when we're producing excess power. And we are going to be investigating pyrolysis going forward, and trying to utilize some of our biomass waste out of the factory a bit better to produce energy. And our suppliers of our solar system also recommended various things for improvement of the system after monitoring for the last year. One of them was capacity expansion. So yeah, the big thing with the solar system, if you can maximize your PV capacity, that's great. And we will look at doing that in the next year or two to try and get some more solar panels on the roof. Make sure your load management is good. Make sure your battery operation is optimized, and then yeah, monitor enhancements. So implement sub-metering to identify specific load centers, and then add real-time performance monitoring to manage visibility better. Right, and that's it from Homewood.
Excellent. Thank you very, very much, Ian. I thought a really good sort of insight in terms of your journey, some really good lessons there noted, and yeah, really good benefits identified. So we'll obviously come back to you at the end, but thank you very much for that. I think we're going to go swiftly across to Gary from Webory, Gary Royston. So Ian, you can switch your camera off and your mic, and Gary, you can obviously share it.
Morning, Sean.
Morning, Gary. If you want to share, and I'll just confirm.
Let me just share. I'll let you know when it comes through.
All right, I can see your
Hopefully
screen.
you can see that.
Presentation mode.
Is it the right screen, or should I switch across?
No, you have to switch across.
There you go. Let me know when you can see that.
Perfect. Take it away, Gary. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Sean. Good morning, everyone. Just first of all, thanks for the opportunity to share our journey. Ian, I think our journey, as you'll see here, is strangely very similar. We've seen some very similar problems. Our stories are very similar when it comes to morale, costs, tax incentives, quality of supply. This is almost going to look a little bit like a repeat, but anyway, this is our story. First of all, who are we? So Webory, we are a family-run business established in 1975. We are based in Pietermaritzburg in our facility, which is about 5,000 square meters. We're currently employing 80 staff. Our market, we are predominantly an automotive component supplier. So we are supplying into Toyota, VW, Ford, Isuzu, predominantly as a tier 2, although we are tier 1 direct to some of those OEs. Our products and services, as you can see on the right-hand side there, we are essentially a wire company. So we bend pieces of wire. Those take many shapes, sizes, and forms. It could be a spring, which most people will recognize, but it could also be an entire wire seat frame, which you can see in the picture there. We do overmolding or injection molding, some metal pressing. We have an epoxy coating line, and then some welding services. So that's robotic welding, be it CO2 or projection welding. But yeah, essentially an automotive component supplier. So our journey actually consists of 2 phases. We had a first phase in March 2020. In fact, the system went live just before lockdown. That system was 129 kilowatts. It was purely solar panels and inverters, so no batteries at that stage, and it was part of a cost reduction strategy. We did at the time look at batteries and battery storage, but it was just not financially feasible at that point in time, given our power consumption and the cost of the batteries. We went through a similar process in where we sort of did our evaluation. We looked at how we were going to finance it. We looked at leasing it, power purchasing agreements. In the end, we decided to purchase the system outright. In terms of evaluating suppliers, we looked at a number of different potential suppliers of the solar, and landed up with an existing supplier who had provided us with some monitoring equipment. So our first phase again was to monitor our usage and our usage consumption, and that supplier would also do solar panels. We had a great relationship. Their work on the monitoring had been fantastic. So it was a natural progression to use them for the solar panels, given that the pricing was correct. Our first phase was just sort of just wetting our toes. We just got into it. We were about 10% of our usage, as you can see in the graph there. Purely cost reduction. It wasn't providing any benefit in terms of downtime. So why did we move, or what were the struggles? So it very quickly became clear after our first phase that yes, we were seeing some cost reductions, but we hadn't solved the whole problem. We had an energy security problem, which while the solar was while the grid was down, the solar wasn't producing, so we were still experiencing load shedding. The frequency and duration of the outages on our municipal infrastructure was increasing. We were having anything from 2 hours to 5 days, which when you're trying to run a manufacturing business, a 5-day outage is just unsustainable. Along with that, we did have a generator, so our diesel costs were increasing, our generator costs were increasing, and not only the costs, but more and more from our automotive customers, we are having to align to their carbon emissions and sustainability goals. So while we're trying to improve on these, we're burning diesel in the generator. We also had some staff problems with staff, and you can't blame the staff. They've just arrived for a night shift, and an hour in, the lights are out, and we're asking them, the shift's cancelled, we need to go home. It wasn't creating a really positive environment in the factory. We had unstable production, which is obviously inefficient. We are starting and stopping. We had huge amounts of lost hours and the resulting overtime to catch them back. From September 23 to January 24, we had over 80 lost hours. And in a similar period, we were about 450,000 Rand in generator costs. So this picture is why we decided to go to look at other options. We started by looking at, well, should we move? Because a large part of our problem was infrastructure related. We quickly sort of decided there, well, where do you move to? Everyone has load shedding, and most areas seem to have a similar infrastructure problem. We looked at larger generators. We looked at hydrogen generators, which just the technology didn't quite seem to be there. And again, no one to really support it. We looked at more solar panels. We looked at wind generation. And in the end, we landed up with a hybrid solution, which was an extension of our current solar, but included batteries. So the battery cost had dropped dramatically. So this system that you're seeing is our chosen solution. So we extended our solar panels by an additional 177 kilowatts to bring us up to a 300 kVA hybrid solution. We've got 250 kilowatt inverters, which you're seeing in the pictures on the right-hand side, as well as the two 600 kilowatt batteries that we've got to store power. And then we have also introduced phase balancing, power factor correction, some harmonic filtering, all very clever stuff that I don't fully understand, but it certainly it provides us with clean power in the factory. Along with that, as you can see again on the right-hand side, is we've got vastly improved monitoring and reporting. So there are numerous elements that we can monitor down to temperatures, battery percentages, which source of power we are using. This system was designed so that when we finally get a sunny day, which is pretty foreign, not too regular nowadays, we can run completely off the grid. So our day shift, it's quite nice to see zero Eskom usage and running completely off the grid. In terms of design, it was designed to get us through up to a stage 4 load shedding event. So again, similar problem since we've put this in June last year. Load shedding seems to have disappeared. So it's not fully tested, although we have had some municipal outages where we know, for instance, we will get through a stage 4 event. In terms of financing, given the cost and the size of this project for us, we financed this with our bankers. Our provider, Real Time Solar, were pre-approved with the banks, which made this really the approval process in terms of financing really, really quick and easy. One of the other big elements in terms of this new solution was to try and increase our solar generation, so from roughly 10% up to 32%. And the big one there you can see on the right-hand graph is we're estimating very close to 0 diesel usage, unless we have a complete prolonged outage, which at the moment that is tracking fairly closely. So our phase 2 implementation, we started in August 23 with all of our municipal and NERSA applications. That was probably the most time-consuming bit of it. We had to build a new substation that started in January 24 and was completed in April 2024, where we started the solar installation, and we were then live in June 2024. The benefits for us so far, again, we've seen no unplanned outages since July 2024. There is obviously the reduced load shedding, but I would say in the same period we have seen an increased frequency of municipal infrastructure outages. So it's been fantastic there. Our stability in terms of production has been great. We've also utilized the system, so we're on a time of use tariff with the municipality. So we have 3 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon where we pay peak rates, and we have managed to almost completely reduce those peak hours. So where we were averaging 12,000 kilowatt hours a month before the system, we're now down to just 1,300 kilowatt hours in the peak. So it's saving us over 10,000 kilowatt hours. And when you realize in winter, for instance, that's over 6 rand a kilowatt, and those tariffs are increasing drastically, as I'm sure we all know, 75% for us since 2020. We're really seeing a great cost saving there. We took advantage of the solar tax incentive. Our generator usage, which I'll show you in a minute, is almost down to 0. And the other thing we don't have stats on it, but we've certainly noticed in the factory is the number of electronic devices that is failing because of sparks or turning on and off in uncontrolled fashion. We have seen fewer electrical devices failing. And then very importantly for us is we now have control over our energy. And when we want to work, previously we sort of, the lights went out, you can't get hold of the municipality, no one can tell you when you will be back on, you can't plan anything, the staff are all getting more and more angry because you can't tell them when they're coming back to work. We now actually have full control. So whether we're using solar, battery, or even the generator, if we have to, it's our decision. And we joke in our management meetings that we have now had to start looking at the weather forecast. So for instance, if we have an outage, we'll be looking at the weather to say, is it sunny? How much of the day is going to be sunshine? Can we get through the day shift on sunshine and run a night shift on the batteries? But it's all within our control. So it's great to have that control back and be making our own decisions. In terms of the benefits, if we just start with the graph on the right-hand side, the green line is last year's usage, and you can see that it's tracking well below all the previous years, obviously with COVID and flooding as the exception. But we have managed to year on year drop our usage or our kilowatt hours. That's demonstrated on the left-hand side in the table. If you look at the third row down, kilowatt hours, you can see in 2019-20, we're averaging 61,000 kilowatt hours a month. And if you fast forward now to this last year just passed, we're only at 43,000 kilowatt hours. And just to put some perspective on that, it's not just demand driven. So we're not producing less. If we look at our turnover, we have seen some growth in those in the various years. 22, 23 was an exceptional year for us. But even still, we've seen a 6% growth over the prior year. And a metric that we like to look at, just because it does put the kilowatt hours in perspective, is the kilowatt hours as a percentage of our turnover. And if you look at the bottom line on the table, you can see that we've steadily made progress in reducing that number year on year, which is demonstrating we've been able to grow, but at the same time, almost reduce our kilowatt hours or our consumption. And then finally, on the very bottom left, these are some rather exciting numbers for us. If we just take a look at a much shorter window, so the last 6 months, really, October 24 to February 25, which is where we've had the new system in place, where we used 172,000 kilowatt hours. If we look at that same period in 23, 24, we've saved 56% on our usage. Now, some of that is demand driven, but it's a great reduction in our usage. And we look forward to seeing how that maps out in the next year. Just in terms of rands and cents, which I guess a lot of you are probably interested in, if we compare 23, 24 and our financial year just past now, 24, 25, you can see we've managed to reduce our electricity bill by 300,000 Rand. The generator costs have almost disappeared. A large portion of that 53,000 Rand, which we had last year, was actually prior to the system being implemented. And then our electrical repairs, so blown cables or equipment related to the supply of our electricity, that has also disappeared. So we've seen a fairly great saving there. Bear in mind, at the same time, our tariffs have gone up the usual 17 or 15%, whatever the latest rate is. So the system is really paying off for us. Just a quick note about maintenance. Obviously, cleaning of the panels is very important, and this is all about maximizing your outputs. We have taken on the cleaning of the panels ourselves, so all of our machinery is on planned maintenance schedules, and we are cleaning the panels every 3 to 6 months, depending on the season. Now, while it's raining, we don't clean them quite as often. Come winter and it's dry and dusty, we'll clean them more frequently. We have also had to install air cons in our substation with all of this equipment generating quite a lot of heat. So we only have not only the costs of the air cons, but the maintenance of the air cons. And then we are predicting some future costs in around new software and software upgrades, just to make sure the system stays up to date and working in an optimal environment. Our future plans. So since July 24, we've produced 155 tons we've saved 155 tons of carbon. We are still planning to put our excess power back on the grid. And as Ian sort of said, this would really help us and sort of maximize the payback on this solution. Unfortunately, we aren't Eskom direct. We are through the municipality, and that comes with some extra complications in terms of them buying back the power. So that has been a long road for us. In fact, we've been trying it since 2020 when we did our first system. We have also made an application to Eskom. They have a peak period buyback scheme. So where I mentioned earlier, the 3 hours in the morning and the 2 hours in the afternoon, if you can save electricity in those peaks, Eskom will essentially buy back that power from you. So at last count, it's about for every 300 kVA you save in those peaks, they'll buy it back at, I think it's R1 million over 2 years. So we are looking to sell back the peaks that we are saving, looking to sell them back to Eskom. We've seen some software upgrades and some new software available within our system, which is actually quite smart and will extend the smart system we have. It's starting to use AI, so you can actually load the weather forecasts, you can load the load shedding schedules in there, and it will actually start to predict your yields, your usage, and your requirements going forward. So, for example, if it sees load shedding coming, it will prioritize the the battery for load shedding rather than using it in a peak. We're also looking at additional solar panels to try and maximize our PV and our storage. And then we are finally just starting a project now where we are looking at using our excess solar or PV generated during the day to operate some of our other processes. So how could we store that excess PV other than in a battery? And the one obvious one for us is to heat some of our water tanks used in our cleaning processes. So to almost superheat them, if you want to put it in those terms, so that it's free. It's during the day. The hot water will store the excess PV power if you want, and we will use those supercharged tanks throughout the day and throughout the night. So not just storing our excess power in batteries, but potentially in some of our processes. And then just to finish quickly, and this is a lesson we've relearned, and I think we all touched on it in the beginning. We started with monitoring. And kind of as we've gone on our solar journey, you get into we've got solar, it doesn't matter. But from a sustainability point of view, it's about making every watt count. So we really, you go back to sort of the first step, which is about the importance of monitoring and measuring, because ultimately the less we use, the better from a sustainability point of view. And that's the end of my slides, Sean.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Gary. I think like Ian, a very good presentation in terms of Webory's sort of lessons and insights into the journey and the benefits that have been derived, and obviously also the future focus areas, which I thought was really, really good. So thank you very much.
Sure. Thanks, Sean.
All right, we're going to hand over now quickly to Spar Ndebela from ABSA. Spar, you're going to just outline sort of some of the financing options, which have been talked about and referenced in the presentations from the two companies, but obviously just give some from a financial institution, some of the options that are available to industry. Great, I can see your presentation. So yeah, you can take it away.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much, Sean. Let me put it on presentation mode. Right, thank you so much, Ian and Gary. I think you've done a great job in anyone who are still wrapping their minds around this scenario of renewable energy. Your organic stories are just pure, and they're very, very much giving clarity on why go for renewable. Thank you so much for those stories. And I must say, it has made me realize that probably I need to take a trip up the N3 and go to PMB and also in the Midlands just to visit you guys, because your stories are really powerful and we look forward to meeting you guys. On my side, so what I'm doing, if you're not convinced by these organic stories, let me help you. The next 3 slides is just to give you a rundown of the important stuff that you need to look out for. You know what has happened currently with the load shedding. If you look at the different years, how load shedding has been, maybe if you follow my cursor, this has been the year. 2023 was the most frustrating year when it comes to load shedding, because we had 334 days, almost the whole year of load shedding. So it meant that we needed to get certainly help when it comes to that. And then if you look at energy availability, only in 2024, we've been able to reach the 70 node that is required for energy availability. But all the time we are lingering below. This is why then currently as it stands, we're sitting at 55.84 in terms of availability, which explains why then we're going to speak on the following slide. The following slides also, am I seeing a hand? Sorry, I don't know, Sean.
I think Karen will take questions and that at the end, unless there's a issue, but I'll check on it. But carry on.
So much. Thank you so much, Sean. Yeah, so also briefly here to give an alignment to the story that Ian and Gary has shared. If you look at how the tariffs has been, I mean, if you look at the tariffs from all the way from 2009 all the way to now, I mean, you can tell there's been a lot that has happened, and the electricity is very expensive at this stage. I think you can read these for yourself because it gives you an ideal view of what has happened in the space. The average Eskom tariff sitting at about almost 13%. That tells you, even though you see that in the graph, it has gone below for the next 3 years, as we know that has been announced. This year is 12.7, and then 5.36, and then in the following year at 6.19. But still, it's a huge cost of your business, which is why then it says that you do have a case for yourself, for your business, to investigate if you do need to have this tool on your side to help you save cost. And also you look at the cost, and the last story that Gary was sharing, to say they're seeing a reduction of how much they're spending on diesel. If you look at how much is being spent, I mean, the diesel from 2012 to now, it's 80% increment on diesel. How much are you going to spend into diesel to try and get your electricity going and get your production going as a manufacturer? So it gives an ideal view to say you can actually save through this option. And then if you look at what's happening this year, I thought maybe let me just give an overview of what we anticipate this year. Maybe briefly, I'll just go even at if you follow my cursor, see what's going to be happening just at spring. You can see the red, it's going to be about 4 consecutive weeks where we may actually experience load shedding. So the energy availability factor plays a huge role in you planning for your business, to say, you know what's going to be happening at some stage, because obviously we get this data from a various source, including Eskom, in terms of their availability factor currently. So it helps us to have a view also in terms of us as financiers, to say what is happening in the space and what does it mean for us and our customers. This is why then we are able to do the forecasting on our side. Maybe the big question on your side, you're saying, then why choose Absa? So currently, what is happening in our space, we've got dedicated sector expertise, including myself, countrywide. So we are able to support you in terms of working closely with you as a business and give you valuable insight. If it has to do with thought leadership, we are there on the ground. We are able to speak to you. As I said, expect driven. Our renewable energy team offers a lot of insights, strategies, and we are able to hold your hand in terms of making you understand who are the installers out there in the market that are reputable. Because what we do on our side, we actually vet the installers on our side and give you an overview of saying, within your area, these are vetted installers that you can look at. However, it remains your prerogative to choose. You can come with your own installer. We are ready to finance as long as they meet certain criteria, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that also we cover you as our client in the space. I mean, we've got experience of over 10 years in the space. We've done over 1,500 projects and still counting when it comes to those projects across South Africa. And yeah, and we've got sustainability initiatives that we have. We've got certain goals, and of which over a certain period, we want to make sure we meet those goals. We've met certain goals already in the sustainability initiatives as Absa. So we're going to continue in that space. So sector solutions that we have, I think Ian and Gary also spoke about a variety ways that you can back up your power in your institution. Certainly, we've got battery backup, grid tied, and also hybrid solar setups. So on our side, we are able to review your energy needs and suggest the best solution just for you. So this is why we always say at Absa, your story matters. We want to understand you as a business, as an individual, because you can be a manufacturer, but as a manufacturer, you are manufacturing various goods and various commodities. So we need to be able to understand that piece. So we work collaboratively with the installers to understand what's going on in your premises, in your business. And then the installer will do a report on their side, but on our side also, we've got a system that we use to do our own reports and tell you how much of solar power you need in your space. And we are able to guide you into that space and hold your hand. Currently, we still have a bounce back energy scheme. That is a scheme that is backed by South African Reserve Bank. And this scheme already has been running the whole of last year. It's ending on the 4th of June this year. This is where also in this space, any business that has a turnover of 300 million and below, they can get preferential rates. Currently, maximum that we can charge you irrespective of your risk rate, in terms of your business, when it comes to finance, is actually repo rate +6 only. So which translates to about prime +2. We can't go beyond that. So it means you get a preferential rate because this is the risk is actually covered by the South African Reserve Bank. And this is done with a view of economic growth along the way. So yeah, I spoke about the installer network that we have in our space where we can share with you. And then we've got financing options when it comes to also independent power producers. We are able to engage at that level so that we have power purchase agreements and we are able to finance that bespoke financing solution across the board. The products that we have in our space at your disposal, if you want to get in touch with us, certainly. We've got products such as commercial asset financing, or we can give you a term loan from our side, depending on the needs of your business. And then we've got the payments terms up to 10 years. Obviously, with the SME space, we go up to 7 years. And then we have a view of loan to cost of up to 100% that we can give to you, depending on the needs of your business and your business. And then overall, we've got various other additional finance and insurance solutions for your business needs, including the solar panels that you actually use in the business. And speaking of that, maybe as I'm about to close, along the way, we've also seen, I just want to concur with the conversation that Gary had in the last presentation, where he speaks of how his system and all his equipment, he feels is more protected with the system. You know, the surge scenario whereby when the electricity goes up and down in your business, some of your equipment can get damaged by that. However, once you install the system that has solar energy, it helps you to control also the surge power and all of those into your business. So that's why I'm speaking about it, because we're speaking of insurance. Sometimes the insurance will not cover that piece in those dotted lines that they may have. So lending solutions, as I said, we have term loans, we've got commercial asset financing. Also, we do finance commercial property, so it can be included in the whole application to try and support you. Islamic banking also gets involved in this space. If you're in the field of in that space of Islamic banking, we are able to also assist. Even if you need foreign exchange, trade finance, we are able to support you also with your fleet management. So yeah, I think in a nutshell, I'll just end it there for now. These are my details. If you want to get in touch with us, with myself, I'm able to connect with you, and then we can be able to have a conversation and help you and hold your hand towards this renewable energy conversation going forward. Thanks for your time, and yeah, we want to wish you well going forward. Thank you so much, Sean.
All right. Thank you very, very much, Spa. I greatly appreciate it. And yeah, I know you went through it very quickly, but it is appreciated. I'm going to ask Ian and Gary if maybe you can turn your cameras on, and we'll have everybody's camera on. And we'll just sort of have like sort of a quick wrap-up discussion. Is it Sabin? I know you've had your hand up. I'm going to give you an opportunity to unmute and ask your question. Sabin? Oh, there we are. Just unmute. Yeah, are you unmuted? Ask your question or make your comment. Can you? So, Sabin, I don't know if your mic is working. You are unmuted. Right, maybe while that's happening. So yeah, thank you very much to the three of you. I think for me there were some sort of key takeaway points. The importance of measurement came through very strongly in both of the firm presentations, and that was something which was done for the initial period. I think Ian, you mentioned 3 months, and you looked at, and Gary as well, you highlighted that you had somebody that put in a measurement system. So I mean that obviously came through strongly, and I think it's something that I've noted firms have highlighted the importance of understanding your base load, understanding your usage, and implementing a good measurement system to track what's happening. So I think that for me was quite important. Maybe just Ian and Gary, Were there some interesting sort of like additional insights that emerged when you were sort of putting in place those monitoring systems? I mean, obviously you wanted to understand your usage, but were there some additional benefits that were derived from putting in place those systems? Maybe Ian, I can start with you.
Yeah, not directly when we implemented the monitoring system because the data wasn't live. But once we put in the inverter and you've got software that links directly to your phone and you can monitor exactly what you're using live, that's when it made a big difference. So you could immediately tell, look, our drum sander is running, but there's nobody working on it, or whatever the case. And that's helped immensely in terms of cost saving.
Excellent. And Gary, from your side, any sort of additional benefits or insights that you gained when putting in place a measurement system?
Well, I just think it's the visibility of it, as Ian's saying, is you realize, oh, you've left a piece of machinery on, or you actually almost have a false sense of what your consumption is and where you're using it. So we identified 1 or 2 large ovens that were actually increasing our peaks. So we turned those on slowly or in certain times. So it certainly has helped us with our reduction. And I think that, like my last slide said, the reduction of your usage has been the biggest thing. You think solar and saving money and all the rest of it, but the biggest saving has actually come from knowing what we're using it, when we're using it, yes, and trying to make plans to not use that power. Yeah.
I mean, I've noted now the more firms that more firms that I visit, like the warehouses, for example, most of them now have the lights that turn on and off when you walk into it. So if there's nobody inside it, it's completely dark, and as somebody works in, they've got the sensors, and those are simple things that firms can do without actually making any real change to how they operate, but just having sort of sensors in place.
I've lost Sean. I don't know if everyone.
Same here.
Yeah, Sean's frozen.
Yeah. It does look like I think Sean will probably try to reconnect shortly. Yeah.
I think I'll
Any
keep you there for a
questions?
second. Apologies. Apologies. I think it's the weather. I'll blame the weather. I was just saying, firms are adopting these things. Ian, you reference SSEG quite a bit. Are you seeing it? It sounds like there is some light at the end of the tunnel in terms of that process.
Yeah, we've just got the application and the quote approved now, but now you've got to pay. So there's a big deposit that we've got to put in down the line, and you've got to pay for that bilateral meter that they've got to install. So that's the next phase we've got to budget for. But it's definitely worth it. Once that's in, any excess we're generating goes straight back into the grid, and they credit that up against our monthly bill. So essentially, you use Eskom as a battery.
All right. And Gary, am I correct? You'll work via the municipality, or do you have to go through a similar process, as far as you're aware?
Yeah, it is. So, in fact, now at 12:30, I've got the municipality here to discuss that exact topic. But it's been a very long and frustrating process. And to be perfectly honest, I don't see any light at the end of the tunnel with the municipality. We have tried to bypass the municipality and go direct with Eskom, but there's a whole bunch of issues that don't involve me and I don't want to get into, but yeah. It's not looking likely, but it would make the biggest difference to this whole system. Yeah.
And I think for me, the key point here is sort of whether it be Eskom and or the municipalities, they need to get on board. I mean, you put it quite bluntly. I mean, they need to come to the party and to support, industries and business that is, looking at adopting the renewable energy solutions. It's important that they, they support the process. I think it's important
especially
that,
Sean, I don't believe it's a technical issue. So it's not like it's not possible. It's paperwork and bureaucracy that's holding it up. Yeah.
Yes. Are there any other questions anybody would like to raise? I know there was a question from Anathan about the SSEG application process, and Ian, you kindly sort of responded, and you included the link to the Eskom website there, so thank you very much. If anybody would like to ask a question before we formally wrap up, this is the opportunity now to raise your hand. And then, Gary or Ian, if there's anything else you'd like to add. I think what I found quite interesting in terms of Gary's presentation is, and I had a discussion with him, I think it was last week, where normally, companies would analyze their performance, over the previous day, what is expected today, all the workers at work, for example. Now you're also looking at the weather. I found that quite interesting. You're now also becoming weathermen. What's the weather going to be like? And you're planning your production around that. You're looking at how you're going to schedule production, which it's interesting.
I hope I don't get in trouble with the PE teachers around the world, but my wife is a PE teacher, and I say I'm becoming a little bit more like a PE teacher. We're planning our days around wake up in the morning and what's the weather going to be, kind of, just to, just in case the power goes off, what shifts are we going to run? How long can we run for? So it has changed the dynamic, but I alluded to it. It's back in our control, which is for us the best thing. We're not reliant on third parties who don't answer you.
Excellent. All right. I'm going to launch the assessment poll, and we'll officially wrap up the session. So I'm just launching that now. There's just a couple of questions which we appreciate people responding to, just to sort of evaluate the benefit from today's session. And while we're doing that, I will just look at sort of closing off the session. Just going to share my slide again quickly, and then we will wrap up. All right. So just in closing, I'd obviously like to thank the participants for being involved in today's session. I found it really interesting. I think this is it's still a new space. I mean, we are becoming much more knowledgeable, and I think that came through very strongly in all three presentations, where each of you, really understands the key issues. I think maybe 10 years ago, there was a limited understanding, generally, and obviously within companies, of sort of renewable energy, where now there's a clear understanding of these issues and what is required, and the importance of the adoption. So, thank you very much to Ian from Homewood, Gary from Webory, and Spar from ABSA for your participation in today's session. Obviously, like to thank all the firms that have participated. We do trust that you found, benefit and real value from today's session. We obviously need to thank our funders of the various cluster programs, and the cluster programs are mentioned at the bottom: the Durban Automotive Cluster, the East Cape Automotive Industry Forum, the Durban Chemicals Cluster, the eThekwini Furniture Cluster, the Cape Clothing Textile Cluster, the KwaZulu-Natal Clothing and Textile Cluster, and South African Automotive Benchmarking Club. So we'd like to thank the funders, and those are primarily the eThekwini Municipality, the Eastern Cape Development Corporation, and then obviously Invest Cape Town and the City of Cape Town in the Western Cape. So without their support, we would not be able to operate. As I've released the assessment poll, we will be giving you updates of the events that will be taking place over the next month. Our next shared learning event is probably going to be towards the end of May. The major reason is because there is a lot happening in May. We've got quite a few AGMs taking place and other events, so we'll probably have our next webinar towards the end of May, and then we are looking at having some in-person events, or hybrid events, should I rather say, probably in about July. But we've got sort of a pipeline of activities we're looking at finalizing, and you obviously will be kept abreast of those through our normal communication channels.